Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker fan sports show.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, Matt's Rule edition.
Matt's Rule.
Matt's Rule. That's it. It's the Matt's.
Yeah.
It's you and me.
We did it.
We did it.
We finally got rid of the other guys.
5 years. It took us 5 years to do a show ourselves. No, the Matt's.
First, I had to play like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I kind of do a fade out on it.
No, well, I think we needed a head coach named Matt Rule to come in to allow us to do Matt's Rule. But
perfectly.
But I am Matt. I'm Honky.
Yeah, Matt Honke, and I'm Matt McGuire.
Hey, how you doing
together? We're the Mats.
We're the Mats.
Well, that came out even less cheesy than I thought it was going to.
Everything I was hoping it would be. It's also the off season, right. And we're kicking off this first show, this first spinoff of Matt's Rule. We're kicking off the off season at the same time. And who is better?
Who's the off season hype guy? You know, to match the energy,
the king,
positivity,
the King of Kool-Aid.
Yeah, yes.
I mean,
the master mixer,
the official Nebraska hype man.
That's right.
I mean, my goodness,
what are you talking about?
Dave.
I'm
Dave
here
from Husk Guys, buddy.
I'm here.
Hey, buddy.
I'm here and I'm
All
ready.
right.
I'm fired up. I cannot believe I'm the first guest on the show. I've been listening for years, and I am honored to be here.
First time caller or whatever. Yeah. This is awesome. And
yeah,
you know, one of the things that really what the Matt's Rule is all about is Matt and I have been talking Husker football together since 1989. I mean, you go back to that, right? I mean, we're getting the in the offseason, we're getting the preseason magazines, Athlon and Street and Smith and Lindy's, and you go down the whole list, right?
It was all in print.
Oh my God. We'd write out the starting lineups and paper and talk about them and break them down.
You did that a lot. But I looked at him, I'm like, this is amazing. And then he would staple them so you could flip over to the second team and who that might be there.
Yeah. You get the height, the weight, the town that they're from. All, you write it all down. And but what it is what Matt's Rule is, it's football. I mean, this is a football discussion at the end of the day. And we love everything that's going on in Husker athletics right now. That's what the Redcast is for. There's a lot of great podcasts, radio shows out there that will talk about them all. We're excited about the basketball win against Creighton. We're excited about volleyball in 2 days. We're excited about what women's basketball did against Maryland. All those things. We love it. We're high on the future of Husker athletics. That's not what this is.
No, we're not going to talk about that.
And there's no better reason to have Dave from Husk Guys on too. This is a football conversation, Husker football through and through. Probably not a lot of analytics. Probably not a lot.
I'm not a big analytics guy. I'm not a big bet guy.
Qualitative, all qualitative.
Yeah. This is
shoot from the hip kind of guy.
Yes. Well, the one spot where we do mirror what the Redcast is going to be doing is we have some wonderful sponsors that we want to talk about here. And first off, it starts with Alumni Hall. They have 2 Lincoln locations, downtown 1120 P Street, South Point Pavilions, behind Barnes & Noble, just kind of to the south of it. I call it behind it. Rob keeps saying it's to the south. But Dave, tell us about this. There's an event coming up here. Oh, cool. And I want you to tell the viewers what this is.
Yeah, we're pumped about it. So thanks to you guys, actually, for the introduction to Alumni Hall. So I'm sure we'll get into it. We'll talk a little bit about Pipeline Jerky, too. But we launched Pipeline Jerky a month ago. And the boys are heading up to Alumni Hall to sign autographs, to take pictures from 12 to 2 on Saturday at 1120 P Street. So Hunter Anthony's going to be there. Trent Hickson's going to be there. Kevin Williams is going to be there. And so is Bryce Benhart. They're going to be there for a couple hours, sign pictures. Anything that you get in the store is 25% off. And they'll sign anything, take any picture with you on for those 2 hours. And they'll also be handing out free samples of our Pipeline Jerky. So we're pretty pumped about it. It's a great opportunity for us. And they are going to start selling Pipeline Jerky in their store as well. So it's a great partnership for us. And cool. We're appreciative that you guys help facilitate that.
That's awesome. And that's the Alumni Hall at 1120 P Street downtown. They also have the South Point store. I know they're trying to get people to head down there too. I'm sure they'll be able to sell Pipeline Jerky there. While we're talking Pipeline Jerky, and I got to thank you with this, Dave. If you go to pipeline-jerky.com, code Redcast officially gets you 10% off.
Oh, dang.
Oh, yeah. Let's look at it. Yeah, show the bag there.
Let's do it. Let's do it, boys. Pipeline Jerky, we're all in. This thing is taking off. Can we talk about it to kick this thing off, or do you want to talk Kool-Aid?
What I love about what all of us have done here, and I'm talking about us with the Redcast. I'm talking about you with Husk Guys. I'm talking about a number of other people. I just saw Abby come up there on the
We're talking about Husker
comments.
Nation.
I'm talking about Husker Nation. People on Twitter. You can use your Husker fandom and your energy in 2 different ways. You could be a negative Nelly. All right. Yeah. Do you like negative Nellies?
No, I'm not a big fan.
Not a big negative Nelly fan.
Real
Are you?
stick in the mud type.
But you can spend that energy being negative, or think of the positivity. Think of what you're creating here, Dave, in the NIL world. I mean, tell the listeners that are new to maybe what pipeline jerky is. Where does the proceeds go? What is the purpose of this?
Dave, tell us where the proceeds go.
Please do.
Proceeds. No, so look,
I will remember.
We've talked about this a few times, and we've, over the years, have talked about this for a long time. You guys have known that I've been very into NIL since it started. I just saw it as a huge opportunity for Nebraska, really, to take advantage of the unbelievable fan support that this program has as a way to get back on top, right? So the opportunity to harness and take advantage of the thousands and thousands, if not millions of fans that exist out there, and us in particular, where we've got 70,000 followers across a number of different channels. How can we contribute? How can we be a part of NIL to help get it back on top? And so we threw out hundreds of ideas, tons of different ideas on what we could do to help. Pipeline Jerky came about. My best friend from home, we both went to Creighton Prep together, Zach Lubeck. Their family owns a pork plant called Quality Pork International, and they create jerky. And we're like, what if we created the jerky specifically for one specific position group? And so, we saw the offensive line as one neglected area, not just, of recruiting in general, but for NIL. Most of the deals that are coming in for quarterbacks, for wide receivers, and for running backs. Sure. And so the offensive line tends to be that neglected side of it. And it's so huge for Nebraska, right? The pipeline goes back, decades and decades. And so that was an area where, like, what if we focus here? We partnered with the offensive line. I made a point to even make this beforehand. One of the things, like, when my mom watches, she always chirps me because she's like, my background is never any good. I did my best, but the lighting's still off. So I apologize, Mom. But we partnered with the boys. So we got all 10 of them, on the 2 deep.
Really?
They're outstanding. They're actually great, great guys. They've been huge help for us. They came out to the plant. They tested the jerky. They were the ones that helped decide the final flavors that we went with. And so we got 2 flavors. We've got honey barbecue. We've got peppercorn. And we launched last month. And so, they get a cut of sales. That's the entire mission behind this thing, is one, to build up the brand for pipeline jerky. So, build up the brand of Nebraska so that becomes a desirable place to play, the most desirable place to play for all O linemen in the country. So they come here, we want the coaches to be wearing our shirts. We want them to be running around saying, like, this is a place where you get NIL opportunities, you get a cut of sales, you can be a part of a growing business that's taking off. And so that's really the entire mission behind it. We launched it a month ago. The response has been truly unbelievable. I think, we very well could have launched, you guys could have bought a couple, and my parents would have bought a couple, and we could have called it a day. But we're selling thousands upon thousands, and it's been unbelievably exciting. And so I think,
congratulations, man. That's fantastic.
You've told me some of the numbers, and I'm not saying them, but they're impressive. And what they're impressive is that Husker Nation, this is a differentiator. NIL, it's a differentiator that we can succeed and win at. And the beauty of this is that we can feel free to hold your nose, plug it, and go, oh, I don't like this NIL world. Feel free to plug your nose and say, I don't like the transfer portal. I get it. I totally am. I can understand that. But at the end of the day, it's the rules. It's what it's what college football is today. And it's something that can set us apart. And there's a historical reference to this. You go back to the 90s and in the 80s, it was strength and conditioning was the thing that set us apart. The fans, Husker Vision, that set us apart in the 90s. We were the first ones to do that. And along the way, there were fans that plugged their nose at some of those things too. Is it, should we be, having all these, TVs and stuff during the games and ads, and it's taking away from the band? Strength and conditioning, this is a 365, 24/7 thing a year. Is this what we want with college athletics? But it keeps evolving. Right. And now it's just evolved into the NIL and transfer portal world. And Dave, I applaud what you're doing here, because we're winning. We are winning in that world. And it's things like pipeline jerky. It's things like the new, the 1890 initiative, I think it is. It's things like that the one constant that's been there in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and 2010s, when we were winning games, when we were losing them, is this: fans, Husker Nation, showing up, supporting.
And that's the thing that other fan bases, you can get the TV deals, and that can allow you to build facilities and a better stadium and maybe sweeten the recruiting. But if you don't have the fans to show up to fund that NIL, and that's one thing, man, that we have never lost, and what irritates me the most is when people pick a narrative that the fan base thinks and then makes fun of us, and they take shots at us for Nebraska fans think like this. Nebraska fans think like that. Nebraska fans, most Nebraska fans are pretty okay. Most of them really. There's a Twitter bunch, but if you're taking Twitter as the poll of this and the pulse of how everybody feels, that's wrong. There's there's a reason you stand out, Dave. It's because you're actually positive. You know, like you stand out because you give good news and you kind of promote a conversation that at least I want to see and talk about. It's not all negative all the time. I mean, you melt down sometimes on game day, but that just makes you genuine.
What a fan!
I can tell you, this entire thing has been founded on just like relentless optimism.
Right.
It has been hard, boys. It has been hard.
Your game day meltdowns are totally justified in my mind, though. I'm like, no, if you explode smoke now, then we got a crazy person on our hands. Now we're talking, I'm like, there's an optimist and a crazy person. I'm like, no, he's just optimistic and is hoping for the best like the rest of us. And which is cool about the NIL thing and what makes Nebraska different is our fans. Fans wanting to help out. And what you're doing with the beef jerky is simply trying to contribute to make what? It's a sweeter place for old linemen to come. Why? Because you love the program. Could you make some money out of it? Yeah, cool, but that's not the point. That's not what you're really doing it for. You want to have a finger in the pie. You want to help. You know, like and the fans. We've kind of been like you can go to games, you can purchase tickets, you can buy merch and everything like that and support the team. But now you can move the needle a little bit and when it comes to like talent acquisition and not have to, be like a Hausman or somebody like that who's got a name on a building in town.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's, you're hitting on a lot of great points, and that's, what Zach and I talk about all the time in this business is like, it truly shows how crazy we are as fans, as entrepreneurs. We're willing to dedicate our time to creating an entire business around just the offensive line. And the entire goal is just to make our football team better, right? Like we're giving out our profits to the players so that they, feel valued and feel a part of this community. We are teaching, taking time out of our time. Like we can start a different business that certainly would probably be more profitable than that one. But, that just shows you've got people who are all the way leaned in. They're leaned and saying, I'm going to launch a business that is dedicated to this team, to these players to help build a better, foundation for the program. Find me other places that are doing that.
Well, you can go to pipeline-jerky.com. You can use Redcast at the checkout. You can get 10% off. And we're not doing that for us. We don't get a cent of that. I offered that to you, Dave, because I want just to be a part of it. If we help bring any extra person to it. By the way, Redcasters, actually what I would really suggest is go there, don't use Redcast, pay the full amount because that money's going to the players. I mean, that's truly what I would say. But Mac, you said something here. If you don't have the fans, and this is what's so impressive about Husker fans, right? Think about that. That means something. If you don't have the fans, go and look at UCLA this year in the first game when they're playing Bowling Green to 20,000 people, if that, inside of Rose Bowl. Go and watch Colorado's athletic director introduce Dion. And when you think of when Trev introduced Matt Rule, and that it was a great day. I mean, he won the press conference. Colorado's AD is having to spend time at his press conference introducing primetime, saying, please, Colorado fans, don't sell your tickets to Nebraskans. When he was asked about how are you going to pay for Dion, right, he basically was like, I don't know, but we'll get it figured out. I mean, he didn't have even a good answer to that. What Nebraska has done, the amount of support, and it drives other fan bases crazy. Because, by the way, Dave, did you know we haven't won a lot of games? Do you know that some teams have beaten us 7 straight times or 6 straight times? And when are you guys just going to give up? Dave, just give up. You've lost 7 straight, 6 straight. Gosh, I've heard that. If
I had other like passions or things going on, I probably would, but I don't, right? Like that's why it's like you got number one's your family, right? And hopefully that's number one for everybody. And number 2 is Husker football. And there really isn't a number 3, right? Yep. So that's like, that's your focal point right there. I do agree that that's what makes it special. And I think there's a natural pivot point here that I'd wanted to touch on last week when we got canceled because of some happenings. But so here's the pivot point, and this is where we can pivot to Rule, because another counterpoint to a lot of what's going on Twitter. I just have been sort of surprised. There was initial positive reaction to him, and then there's just been a lot of huffing and puffing, right? And it's like I'm just in my like Twitter mentions, just like pulling my sword out, like who do I gotta like fight off next? But one of the things I think directly in line with what we're talking about is what I really, really like about Rule. I think it's a home run hire. I love the guy. I'm obviously probably a little bit on this side of the fence if I was going to love whoever it was. But what I really love about the guy runs to chaos. He runs to fire. And I think that's a lot of sort of what we do too. I mean, you guys started this entire Redcast in like the absolute barrel, like the bottom of the barrel of this thing.
Spring of
and if just
2017.
just the lowest time, right? And it's like, how insane do you have to be to start a business around a 4-8 football team? Like,
well, we didn't know at the time it was going to be that way, but yeah, it's
well, but even right now, I'm starting an entire business around a 4-win football team, right?
This
like it's insanity. But I guess what I come back to and what it gets me excited about him with what happened in Baylor, right? And you go back to his time when he started there, is he had a ton of different opportunities coming out of Temple to go to a lot of different places that would have been a lot easier. He could have taken over. He was the number one guy at Oregon, and he had Herbert there waiting for him, generational quarterback that was ready. Like that would have been an easy job for him. He went to Baylor, where they had, if you read about that scandal in 2017, they had hundreds of sexual assault like violations at that school. It was one of the biggest operational failures in the history of college football, if not universities and college in general. And he ran there, right? Yeah. So he does that. And then like right now, the guy just made $40 million and he's running to Nebraska and he's in Scotts Bluff right now. Yeah. Right. Like he's, like Heather Dinich is tripping us. And like, I get what she was saying of like, this guy's got $40 million. What's he doing out there? Well, that's for another day. But the guy could be golfing. He could be like in Europe somewhere. And he's like, nah, you know what I'm going to do?
I want it.
Know what I'm going to do? I'm going to Scotts Bluff. That's where I'm going. Like, I love it. Like, that why? Is like, that's it. That's what we need.
His handicap is that he loves football too much. That it's not golf. He doesn't have hobbies. He loves football. He's a grinder. And there's somebody about 2.5 months ago that talked about being a grinder being really important for this position. And that kind of aligns with what Trev was wanting versus what Trev got. I said this last week on the Redcast, and I'll stand by this. What Nebraska fans don't like is embarrassments. And we've had times, it's not just on the field. It's off the field embarrassments that we don't like. If you go back to 2003.
Especially with Twitter.
Goodness gracious. Could you imagine Twitter back in the Solich days when he got fired and that 40-day search that Pearson
did? Could you
did?
Imagine it in this Tom Osborne tail end? Well, we would have been merciless.
but
unrelenting.
But you go back to when Solich got fired and Peterson hurt the brand, not by just firing a coach, but then that 40-day search, sending out planes to Arkansas that come back empty. And it hurt the brand. And by the end of it, we were just lucky to get a coach is what it felt like. And what Trev did during this search, this 75-day search, was he identified what he wanted. It wasn't a shit show. He didn't go out there and things weren't getting leaked left and right. He got the guy he wanted. He got him on the right time frame. It elevated, in my opinion, the level of the program. As I listened to Jim Rome interview, and I finally got around to that one today, him interviewing Rule and how positive everything about it was. Not just Rule, but then Jim Rome at the end of it goes off about Nebraska for a couple of days or a couple of minutes, just about how important, how good of a school it was, how much he likes it and remembers the great times. We step out of this better. Now, we got to go and win games next year. But you know what? It's the offseason right now. We're 9 months away from playing games. And we got the right guy on tonight, Mac, to talk about, how do you win? Dave, what does winning the next 9 months look like before we even kick off that first game? What does this offseason look like to you?
We're already doing it. Please. We're already doing it. Home run hire. It's a fair question. I guess I think even touching on that, I do agree. Like, I think I was probably more privately critical of Trev. I just was like, oh my God, make a decision. This is crazy. You've got like 9 weeks on this thing. And to come out where we were, having like had the guy from the beginning, just had to go through some snags on like negotiating. I was thrilled with the way it worked out, because I think there was certainly some hesitation there as like week 5 and 6 and 7 turned around. It's like, does he have a guy? Like, what's going on? Are we going to miss our guy? So I think, that's a win in itself. I think that he got the guy that I think is a really good fit. I think the only one that, maybe Fickle would have been the other one that probably people are like jonesing for a little bit. But I think when you've got that guy right now, you completely shift, and this is going to be the most exciting time possible because you've got the right head coach. Everyone's focused on the assistants, and I think we can go in on the assistants. I think it's really interesting what he's doing there. And then when you hit the transfer portal, I mean, it's just going to be absolute. It already is. It's going to continue to be absolute and utter chaos for the next 3 to 6 months. Where, I mean, look at the names that are already in there. You've got 20, 30, 5 stars that are already in there. So I think there are over 1,000 players are already in the transfer portal. So, I think when you have, like, they're expecting, I posted these numbers last week. There's 11,000 college football players in FBS, and they're expecting like 4,000 to 5,000 of them to transfer. I mean, so basically every other player,
40%, yeah, whatever. 40.
Almost every other player, every third player on your roster is going to transfer. And so I think with that, like, winning the offseason is like, let's get some exciting coaches and let's get them, let's get some momentum going. Let's start landing some recruits. Let's start landing some transfer portal guys too. I think we are kind of talking about it before the show started of, I'm probably less interested in the 16-year-old. I want the 24-year-old Hendon Hooker. Give me the 24-year-old that's going to come and start right away and is seasoned and is like ready to play.
What I think is important, and you've heard there's a lot of talk when Rule got hired on that opening press conference was about development, being a developmental program. And this is a different world being developmental today versus before.
What's that look like in this world?
What I think it looks like in this world, if you want to marry the two of you want to have good transfer portal, good NIL, all that with good development, get the kids in now. This next month and a half is so crucial. I've said this before with like recruits coming out of high school. I'll say the same thing with transfer portal guys. If you're not here in January, you're dead to me. It's not that I don't want to get the great guy in May, but it's so hard. I mean, O'Shawn was the top transfer portal guy in the country coming out in May, and we love O'Shawn. I don't have a single issue with O'Shawn, but how tough is that getting here in May or June and be expected to be major contributor? Stephen Wynn comes here from Alabama. He's been developed, but he still gets here, and there's such a short acclimation period, and you're meeting with team. Get here in January. So if we're going to get 10 guys in the portal, if that's what we get, or if we get 15, or if we get 5, from year to year, I don't care. But whatever you get them here in January and get them through the process. And develop them.
This whole recruiting cycle, this particular one, is going to be probably, you'll look back on it and be historically a waste. Like typically these transition classes just don't produce much. And this one is not tracking any different. Not to mention the fact, at least when Frost came here, he was recruiting college. So he had players that he was like in on a little bit and had relationships with and could build and bring towards Nebraska. Rule doesn't have that.
But again, when Frost got here, there wasn't NIL and transfer portals either. I mean, and really this is something that Rule hasn't had either. So
that's what I'm saying. Like the recruiting class. Lost.
Well,
but the transfer portal, totally different.
Well, that shitty Iowa fan or whoever out there that will talk to you all offseason about, how Rule started 1-11 or 2-10 at his other stops. Number one is
that one shitty Iowa fan,
or it could be a shitty Colorado fan. It could be a shitty lot of different fans, right? But whoever it is that's on social media that's coming after you and saying, Rule his first season he's had bad records, and he has. What I would say is there's a couple of things to look at with that. Number one is the circumstances that he took over at those other positions. Like you said with Baylor, I mean, my goodness, he was down to 45 scholarships, I think. And the other thing is the big difference right now is transfer portal and NIL. The opportunity to flip a roster faster with players who are more ready to play. If I can bring in a third-year guy and he's more ready to play. But again, it all starts with you got to get here in January.
Do you think that's the advantage too of I don't know the offensive coordinator's bio that well, but the thing with Frost is you were bringing him and you were kind of married to a system almost. You're married to a type. Do you think it's kind of an advantage with Rule that you're not really married to a type of offense or defense? It allows you to be a little more I have a bigger pool to choose from when it comes to transfer portal guys. I'm like, well, if we can get this guy, then we're kind of lean this way. But if we can get an actual dual threat quarterback, we'll play it more this way.
Offensively, we absolutely are not married to it. It's going to be physical football is what Rule said. Yeah. And he kind of plugged his nose when he went to Baylor to do all the shotgun spread stuff because that wasn't his gig. I mean, when he was at Temple, I mean, you'd get under center, you'd have fullbacks on the field. It was a lot of power football. But you get down to Baylor, and you're down there in Texas. I mean, my goodness, the high schools in Texas, that's basically where the spread was invented. And he adapted to what they did.
Okay.
Hey, look at that. Bob Collins just placed a $100 jerky order.
Thanks, Bobby.
You're helping out the pipeline there, Bob. Good job.
Thanks, BC.
But, defensively, and Rob, if you would, Redcast Rob is on the back end here, taking care of all the comments and everything. If you'd put up, I think it was Jason Stinger had a comment about Jim Leonard. We just talked about the offense, but on the defensitive side, it was just like literally a few minutes before we went live tonight, Jim Leonard posted something. Rob loves that. But Rob, what was the comment there? It was because it's basically Jim Leonard just posted something that he's not coming back. He's going to coach through the bowl game. Yeah. So did you see Leonard is going to leave Wisconsin after the bowl? Do you think we have a shot, or do we get Schumann? Who the heck knows? I'm surprised we don't have a DC already, but
he reached out. Well, so we also have breaking news. I think Raiola is going to get retained on the O-line. So that's
sure? Okay.
That's like breaking, like as of right now. With the pipeline jerky boys we're talking about, we're like, because we need him to start recruiting with this, right?
We got the right guy. We got
the right guy, man.
So, but Leonard, he reached out to Leonard. At least there was rumors on the message boards, which are always accurate. Those are never wrong. 100%. That he had reached out. Leonard's that's like a home run hire, right? I think that.
I thought it was if Wisconsin kept him. I thought that was a home run hire. So
I think he's incredibly desirable, but I do. I've listened to 700 hours of podcasts in the last few months. I'm sorry, I even forget whose take this was, but there is it is interesting because we as fans always try to put together an all-star team of coaches. We're like, oh, okay, so we got to get Urban Meyer as the coach, and then he's going to have Ed Orgeron as the O-line coach, and then he's going to have, Mickey Joseph's going to coach wide receivers, and that's not really how it works. It works in the sense that Rule's got his guys, and he's bringing his guys. Every single guy he's brought is a guy he knows and a guy he trusts and a guy he thinks he can motivate. So, I think there's that element. And I think we're so broken as a fan base that we're that's what Frost did. Frost brought his buddies in and, that didn't work. And so now we're Rule's bringing his buddies in. I think Rule's buddies are better, hopefully. I think his buddies are the OC at South Carolina. They're not Mario Verduzco. No offense, but
no offense, but clearly
lots of offense. Plenty of offense.
You came from Iowa, and then went to Central Florida,
Northern Iowa, yeah.
Northern Iowa.
Directional Iowa.
Not that it mattered. Quarterback coach in Iowa is kind of
but
what are you talking about?
But the buddies thing is interesting because really that's at the end of the day, a lot of teams hire buddies, or a lot of coaches hire their buddies. The question is, are your buddies good or not? If you have good buddies that you're hiring, can
your buddies win?
Can your buddies win, right? We just joked about Iowa. They hired their son, to be their OC, right? So, there's nepotism and there's buddies. But the thing is with this staff, how do you compare it right now? Now, John Bishop this morning posted, I thought, a really interesting thing. He was comparing the 5 coaches that we've already got confirmed, which is Marcus Satterfield, offensive coordinator, tight ends, E.G. Barthel, the running backs coach, Terrence Knighton, defensive line, Evan Cooper, secondary, and Ed Foley, special teams. And then there was 2 other guys. It was a linebackers coach, and I think it was Jake Peets at quarterback. And he's like, these are iffy. We don't know for sure. They're not announced. But he was comparing those 7 versus the 10 that Frost brought in. And he was just comparing big-time experience, big-time being pro experience and Power 5 experience. Mm-hmm. And this staff already, just with those 7 guys compared to the 10, they already had, I believe, more pro experience than the 10 guys did.
Yeah.
And they were right up there with the P5. So the idea, to your point there, Dave, Frost brought in his buddies. Looks like Rule's bringing in his buddies. Well, are your buddies better?
And one of the things, too, that one of the things that Rule said is one of the mistakes that happened with him in Carolina was that he hired guys because he'd never coached in the NFL. He hired a few coordinators and a few assistants that he didn't know, but they had a lot of NFL experience, and he thought he could lean on them to add credibility to himself, to add credibility to the team because they knew the NFL better than him. He cited that as one of his biggest mistakes because he didn't know those guys. That took him a long time to get to know him, and the dynamic just never worked, and they were learning on the job. So, he even said in a few interviews, I learned from that, and I'm going to, I need to go with guys that I think I can, that are going to be grinders, that are going to go to bat for me, that are going to go to work for me. So, and he talks so much, him and Trev, about alignment and making sure the alignment's there from the, the coordinators up to the coach, up to the athletic director, the president, and chancellor. So, I'm aligned with that. I think as much as I'd love to have Orgeron here as the O-line coach, is not realistic.
You got to get the fit.
Coaching hires to me are a lot like recruiting in terms of like you want to get the 4-star, the 5-star, the big name. But at the end of the day, it's like it's pretty hard to tell, who's going to be a hit, who's not. I don't feel that strongly. I certainly don't feel very strongly at all past offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. If you're talking about assistant coaches beyond that, I don't really care. And as far as like being a great recruiter anymore, well, NIL kind of helps with a lot of that being a great recruiter anymore. So I think we have. Yeah. I don't think that's as big of a deal as it maybe used to be. So if the offensive coordinator is maybe he's generational in terms of like his style, like maybe you got a young Chip Kelly coming up or something like that. But short of that, mostly it just needs to be the head coach needs to be able to communicate what his team needs to look like to those coordinators. We need to be tough. We need to be, disciplined, hard in the trenches to beat, and execute what we actually do. And that can be anything. I mean, that really can be anything. And as long as the message is clear and the coaching is done, you can be successful. So like, that is the coaching, the coaching arguments or the debates on that or making lists of that. To me, it's like, I'd love to have an opinion on it, but you're kidding yourself. If people give you a list, I'm like, if we could just put this together, we'll win. I'm like, yeah. Everybody thought it was a great idea when Frost brought his whole staff because there was going to be no upload time. It was everybody knew exactly what to do. We were going to hit the ground running, man. We're going to flip the practices to mornings and just do that. We're going to do whatever it takes. I mean, they had the answer for everything. And then you fast forward to now, and then you hear on the radio some of our media types go, well, you could tell right away Frost was in over his head. He didn't know how to make the moves a head coach needs to move. Well, listen, mother effer. I'm like, which one is it? Because you're telling me two different things. Did he have it figured out? Was it next level? Did he come in kicking doors down and making sure things were going the right way? Or was he over his head? And regardless, we're going to hear good things about Matt Rule, because that's the kind of the space we're living in right now, and that's okay. I choose to live there anyway. I'm going to hope it's on the good side of things, but I do believe when we're looking at a coach right now that is the most suited for the job in temperament and mentality. He seems to be a delegator. He seems to know what it takes to get out there. He's a grinder, but he doesn't necessarily seem to be a micromanager in terms of it's got to be this way, this way, this way. He's got more principles than necessarily rules, if that makes sense.
Well, what I would say is we have a very before and after moment in Husker history with when it was good and when it wasn't good. And it was Solich being fired. I mean, everything up until that point, not that everything was always peachy beforehand and not that everything has always been terrible after, but that's been a pretty easy cutoff point. So if you go back to when the moment that Solich was fired, this is now the fifth head coach that we've hired. We hired two guys with clear Nebraska ties, one of them being Frost. The other I'll say is Pelini, even though he only had the 1 year, but I'm still going to say he's a Husker.
He was a link at least.
He had ties. And then we've hired two guys from the outside, Callahan and Riley. Both of them seem stretches. Both of them seem like guys that you had to, you really had to kind of force feed yourself to see that they fit in. Rule, if you compare him with all of those other four predecessors, he definitely is an outsider. He's not from here, but it doesn't feel like a stretch to fit him in. He's from Penn State in that blue blood Big Ten.
That helps me a lot in terms of like when I think about him and mentality, because his Big 12 background, background's like to me is like it's a little.
He's
soft,
a walk-on linebacker. He's
Penn State.
There's a lot of things about him. Quite honestly, I mean, when you think of what Devaney was, he was a Michigan guy. But when you think of he fit in so perfect once he got here. I've said this 1,000 times with Devaney. The guy didn't even step in the state of Nebraska to live here until he was in his late 40s. He's older than I am now.
You said it once. He said it 1,000 times.
Before he even got here, and he fit here so well that he became the face of the state. I mean, I can't imagine moving someplace still in my life that I haven't lived in and becoming the face of that state.
That's a great point.
So it doesn't have to be a Husker guy. We've tried that. In fact, the fans that will sit there and say it needs to be this. In any of the positions, the coordinator spots, the head coach, it has to be an offensive guy, has to be a defensive guy, has to be a pro guy. Okay, what do we see in the report? Donovan Raiola is being retained.
Listen, I already broke that news.
So that was already broke. Okay, so Mac is going to.
I already broke that news.
So here, let me the news before Rivals.
I broke the news before Rivals. We already knew that. I think what's interesting about the coaching decision, like there's already been such a micro focus on Rule. To me, there still is that element of look at the way that this thing unfolded, because we had the opportunity to look at every single coach that existed, right? Because we had so much time to be able to go through this. Every single one of them just had either a fit issue or they weren't going to come issue, right? You run through the list of who at least I wanted. Urban Meyer's my number one, and I won't back down from that. That's your only home run hire that exists. That guy's won everywhere he's gone. He's a guaranteed winner, but he doesn't want to coach. So that's not a fit. And he's also,
I didn't think he was a home run hire, to be honest with you.
That's fair.
That would be my argument. He wasn't a home run hire. Not only because I think he could have been divisive. That's one thing. I also don't know that we're getting 2007 Urban Meyer.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm kind of going through is you got a guy like him who's theoretically on paper, the home run hire. He's got a ton of baggage. He would divide the fan base. You don't know if you're getting 2007 Urban Meyer or or 63-year-old Urban Meyer, or whatever, 59-year-old Urban Meyer who doesn't want to coach anymore. He just wants to do TV, and he just flamed out like crazy in the NFL. So he doesn't have that fire in his belly anymore. So he's out, right? And then the rest of those names, Matt Campbell stinks. Dave Aranda, Dave Aranda I actually really liked a lot, and I could have been, sold on him, but he goes 6-6. So it's he had a one flash in the pan year that worked really well. Maybe he's not as good. Then you run through Leipold, guy starts 5-0, finished 6-6. Is he any good? He's never really coached the mate. When you run through every one of those coaches and you get through each one of them, even Fickle, who I'd put up there as a guy who I respect a ton. And I think he did a fantastic job at Cincinnati, and he was always a top on my board compared to Rule, with what Rule's doing, running to the fire, the willingness and the want to be there. Fickle kind of, he's done really well at Cincinnati, but that's all against Tulsa and Miami, Ohio, and he beat up on mid majors. It's sort of the Frost situation again in a lot of ways. So he hasn't necessarily rebuilt multiple programs the way Rule has. So I guess as you go through all those, and then the last one being Dion that everyone's obsessed with, and I love the guy. He's one of my favorite players of all time. I don't know if his shtick will work in Colorado. I don't think it would have worked here. And so I guess as you run through all of those names, we already have gotten so fixated on Fickle or on Rule, and are he hasn't beat any ranked teams. It's oh my God, for the love of God, the guy in year 3 took a program on the brink of the entire university being shut down, and they won 11 games. Sorry, he lost to Oklahoma. Sorry about that. Oh no, he lost to Oklahoma that one year, but when you look at all of those coaches that all just had a ton of warts on them and just weren't fits, and we analyzed every single one of them, I just felt of those hires, Rule's fantastic. That to me is the macro look at it of I think he's fantastic.
Well, I was going to circle back to something you said before about being frustrated with Trev and how long it took. Do you think that if negotiations would have went more smoothly, the announcement would have been made sooner, or do you think they were going to kind of wait till that timetable kind of to the end of the season anyway before they made the announcement? Because it sounded like they were really trying early on, and then something fell through, and then they had to come back to it.
I think his timeline was always the same.
You think it was going to okay?
Yeah,
I think it was always the same, but my concern was I do think it felt I would love to at some point this book will come out, and this is one of those things. I'm if Pipeline Jerky gets big enough, if Husk Guys gets big enough, all I want in my life is just to be in those rooms. That's it.
Total access, right?
I just want access. That's it. I just want to know,
I'm with you 100%. I'm not gonna
so you walk in there and Matt Rule says no. What do you say back? I want to see Trev flip the table over and be you're coming to play. You're coming to Lincoln, and I'm writing a blank check, and you're going to figure it out. Because how did that go? And that stuff's fascinating to me. Of how do you get in that room?
100%.
How do you get in that room and say what did Trev say? And I love that the Trev Rule dynamic is sort of fascinating because it didn't dawn on me until the press conference. They played at the same time. So Trev played in it, ended at 93 in Nebraska a couple of years earlier, but then Rule played 94 at Penn State. So I guess I feel there's probably these are boys, right? They're hard-nosed 90s football players who are what's it going to take, Rule? What's it going to take, buddy?
The idea that Rule is sitting there kind of, moping a little bit after getting fired from the Panthers, and probably too soon. Right. I mean, it was early in the season. He could have got turned around. Other teams like the Commanders got it turned around. But anyways, he's kind of moping a little bit. He just got fired. Who wouldn't be? It doesn't matter.
Money case of the Mondays.
Money isn't the savior here. He just got fired from his job. And it was the fact that Trev calls him up and they start talking. And that's the thing that kind of got him out of that natural funk that anybody would be in after getting fired.
Yeah.
You get fired and you start to question yourself. Oh, geez, maybe I'm not as good. Maybe this or that. And then you start talking to a like-minded person. And to your point
And
there,
they
Dave, and that's what
definitely like-minded. Do they not sound like little mini
toughness?
versions of each
they
other?
sound like you and me
Discipline.
talking with each other, Mac. Like
Yeah.
it's like they've known each other for 30 years.
Yeah, it's
But-
awesome. I mean, I think in that instance, like Trev's like a unicorn, right? Like I kind of tweeted this last week of like, this is a guy who's played at a high level. So he has a ridiculous level of respect for the players, you know, for recruits and for the coaches themselves. And he can go out and recruit and he can talk football. He can talk numbers. He can talk, you know, athletic direct, you know, that macro level too. He's been in TV for a decade and he's been athletic director for a decade. Like there aren't a lot of folks out there that can do all three. And you think back at our like previous athletic directors, you know, we got I-Course in there. Imagine that guy negotiating literally anything, right? Like that. And these athletic directors now are salesmen. They're salesmen, they're promoters, they're pitchmen, they're NIL leaders. Like, so I guess
the good ones are, right. And
the good ones are, right.
To go back to what you were saying though earlier about Trev, that's what sort of kind of impresses me about the guy. It sounds like, and I know you are a content consumer just like I am, and so you'll find these weird interviews and dig up stuff and you'll listen to it. But I've done that with Trev to some extent. And it's interesting when Trev talks about when he first went to UNO and how they presented him with these budget concerns and what he had to do to get UNO more solvent by the time he left there. And, you know, that's when they lost wrestling and they went Division I. But it was a big process. And what Trev did throughout that was take on meetings. And he met with Buffett, met with a whole bunch of people and develop a brain trust to kind of guide him on what to do. So to fast forward to now, and then you hear him say, because that fascinates me, he was told no. You know, and but there was also this, but I want you, but you want me, and but there's this thing between us, and like, and it's gonna take a problem solver. It's gonna take a guy who can go out there and like, well, how do we make this work? Because some people hear no and move on to the next one because they might get freaked out about it's already been a long time. You know, the Husker fans are tweaky as hell about shit like this. You know, we don't want our brand tarnished by a long coaching search, and Trev knows this. I mean, his ass is already out there because he fired a coach 3 games in. So for him to handle this and then problem solve and actually get the guy, because I think Rule's words himself was like Trev's a bulldog. I think he was talking like what a bulldog Trev is once he has it in mind that he's got the right guy. So when people kind of question, is he 1A? I don't think there's much of a question for me. Now you could be skeptical.
Sure.
It's easy to be that. I don't like being that way. It just makes my soul sad. I'd rather just believe in the guy that's doing it. I think he got 1A. I really do.
What I said in a lot of our DMs and texts and all the whatever Trev was going to do, whoever he was going to hire, he could hire Matt Campbell. And I know what that makes you feel like, Dave, but he could hire whoever. And the most important thing to me would be that press conference and how do you explain it? You're gonna get asked hard questions. To me, there was absolutely no home run hire, and that includes Urban Meyer. There was nobody that was a home run hire out there. So whoever you were going to hire, you were going to have to answer questions, and that's fine. That's
you don't think Urban would have been a home run hire?
No, absolutely not. We talked about this while you were gone for a second. So
I guess how you'd define a home run hire. I guess from a press conference standpoint, though, definitely
from a divisiveness standpoint, it could have divided the fan base too. But the point is, even if let's say it was Urban Meyer, he hires Urban Meyer. At the end of the day, it was going to be how do you answer the questions? How do you introduce the person? What was your thought process? Why is Urban Meyer? Why is Matt Campbell? Why is Luke Fickell? Or why is Matt Rule the right guy? And all I can say is I went in to that last Monday, when they did the announcement with Rule, I went in there not really knowing much about him. And I walked out of that day. And I mean, look, people can sit there and say the same thing about 5 years ago with Frost and when he was announced, and that was a magical day. And I get it. That was a magical day on different levels because
that was off-season Nirvana.
Well, and it was bringing back history. We had former players.
Everything aligned. Undefeated season. Prodigal son comes home. This marriage, we're our lowest.
Do you know what Trev does for us?
Shit on us again.
Do you know what Trev does for us? Trev allows us to move on from some of the past with somebody who's part of the past. And I'll give you an example of that. This is the first season.
Is that a haiku?
Well, maybe. This is the first year I got season tickets. And maybe I just hadn't gone to as many home games, although I usually go to quite a few. Yeah, but this is the first year when we went to the Oklahoma game, Mac, you and I went there. It was hard to watch some of the history stuff, and I'm a history buff. Yeah. I love Nebraska tradition, and it felt weird seeing us. I don't know how to say it the right way, but it's like we carted out the old guys again.
It's too long ago.
It's
too long.
It's like the same. It's this time. It's the 30-year anniversary of the guys that 10 years ago. It was the 20-year anniversary, and I love that. I love the history. I love those guys. They're the fabric of this program. But the problem is, I went to Norman a year ago, and in Norman they did the same thing. They brought out the guys from 40 years ago, and then they showed the 20 guys.
Yeah.
Then they showed the 20 guys they have in the NFL right now.
It's not those guys' fault. It's not the 90s guys' fault that's the last time we were really, really good.
Absolutely not.
But at the same time, it's like you're only listening to REO Speedwagon from that little peak time in the 80s. You're not listening to their later albums. And that's kind of what we are right now. We're just not hitting.
It was the first moment, Mac. You and I walked out of that stadium in the second quarter towards the end of it. And I hate leaving a game early, but you know what? It's not my job to stay at a game until the end. As a fan, I'm sorry, it's not. My job is to cheer as loud as I can for as long as I can. I'm hoarse by the end of a game. But when we're getting beat that badly, you know what? I'm not going to boo. We don't boo. That's not something I do. But you speak with your legs instead of your voice. I just couldn't stand and watch it. And but that the point of that game against Oklahoma was a sad moment for me because it was sad for me. I couldn't cheer for these guys that were at the 30 and 40 year, whatever the anniversary, was that they did that day. It was hard for me to cheer at it because I've already seen it before. And I love those guys. Those guys, I mean, those are the guys I absolutely idolize. My first season of Husker football as a fan is 1983. And I remember every flipping moment since. There isn't a season, a game that's gone by I haven't watched or paid attention to since Penn State. Matt Rule brought that up on his introductory press conference, the 44-6 victory in the inaugural kickoff classic in East Rutherford, New Jersey in 1983. I've been there. I've been there every single damn game. And yet I couldn't get up for us doing it again against Oklahoma. And so my point there is that we have to start creating new tradition. Yeah. And Trev, maybe it's hard for an Eichhorst. Maybe it's hard for Bill Moose to be the guy to make that big move. Trev is part of that history. And Trev, I think, is the guy that's perfectly situated to move us into that next generation. He got rid of another former golden boy from this program. I mean, that was a lot of talk of Scott the first couple of years that he kind of walked on water. He got here. He could do what he wanted.
It was all the time.
There was no checks and balances. And when Trev got here,
give him what he wants.
At the very least, Trev, the second he got here, he can sit there and go, look, I think Trev wanted Scott to work. But I think Trev could also look at the North Stadium and go, my name's up there. I'm here too.
I think
you did great things. You won us a championship, but I've done some things here too.
I would agree with everything you're saying, and I would elevate it a little bit too, of saying like he's the right guy at the right time. But he's doing something that my dad talks about a lot. He's putting all of his chips on the table. He's moving them all to the center, right? And he had to. This is it. This is his shot, right? He's not going to get to hire another coach. Like that's just not how athletic directing works, right? Yep. And so
not unless Rule advances.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Sure. Maybe Rule gets to 10-2, and then it's like, oh, we need like somebody else, and he goes somewhere else. Fine.
But you're right. Otherwise,
that to me is what also makes this exciting. Is like this is it. Like this isn't like say what you want about Mickey Joseph. We don't have to get into that part of it, but Trev talked about it. Of one of the reasons he didn't select Mickey ultimately was what Trev called risk mitigation, and he said that in quotes too, of saying like Mickey just had never had that, D1 Power 5 head coaching experience. Right. And so if Trev's going to move everything, he's going to move all his chips and move him to center. He's got to bet on his horse, and he's betting on his horse. So that to me is like, this is Trev all in. This is Rule all in, and Rule's got a lot less to lose. He's got $40 million, but man, like that's what's like Trev gets turned down by Rule and he comes back. And is like, we're making this work. We're going to figure it out. His deal is insane. He's making $12 million per year in year like 6 or 7 or something. He's going to make $1 million a game. Every Saturday we see him out there, he's going to make $1 million. But Trev was just like blank check.
Well, if you've got the right guy, there is no amount that's too high, to be quite honest. Nobody asked what Nick Saban's salary is because Nick Saban's salary, whatever it is he's getting paid, isn't enough. It's truly not enough.
No.
They should double it. They should triple it. He would be worth every penny for what he did there. And what is Alabama? Alabama's a blue-blooded football, and you go back to when Alabama hired him. Go back to 2007 or 8 or whatever the year was, and what are the memories of? We like to have selective memory. Alabama was a shit show. Anyone remember Mike Price? That was a fun little adventure for him. He didn't even make it through his first offseason. He was at a strippers club with a company card and gets fired. And they went through a series of guys like embarrassing moments for Alabama fans. And you hire the right guy. Now let's put some. So look, we're pumping the Kool-Aid, right? Well, let's pump the brakes for a second here. No, I'm going to do it, Dave. What was the first season? That Saban had there at Alabama? They went 7-6. They went 6-6 during the season. They lost it to Louisiana Monroe to end the year, or I guess the second to last game of the year. Won their bowl game. They went 7-6.
I take it.
Well, and here's I'm going to repump the Kool-Aid now. Now I'm going to pump the Kool-Aid. I'm not going to say 12-0 next year, but you know what? I think this is a bowl team next year. And if it's 6-6,
it was a bowl team this year, so I would agree.
I'll say 6-6 to me is what my expectation of next season is. I would be disappointed at 5-7. Now, disappointed doesn't mean we have to say, okay, well then if you're disappointed, what's the next step? Now are we firing guys? No, I'm not. God, that's so reactive to something. But my thing is, we need to get to a bowl game. This is so crucial. I think it's so important for fans. This is a time of season, December, where we should be planning our next game and not talking about the offseason already. That's important, and that's something I don't think Matt Rule can afford to just have a 1-11 first season like the Temple and the Baylors. But again, these are different situations too.
1-11 would be very, very.
It would just be tough. I mean, we saw what happened to Frost in year one, starting 0-6 with all the. You can try to explain it away, but when you start 0-6, and we can't afford to have that bad of a start.
But I do think the best I can. Here's a couple different points that give me a ridiculous level of optimism, which is the state of mind I exclusively exist in. That one, look at Tennessee. I mean, unbelievable. Heupel's in his second season. So, obviously we want to anchor things correctly. And it's like, are we going to turn this around in the second season? Maybe not. Oregon, first year head coach, right? Unbelievable season they just had. So Tennessee, second year head coach, unbelievable season. At one point in time, we had 5 coaches in the top 10, including Lane Kiffin, including Heupel, including a whole host of other guys that are in their first or second year. So the flipping of the roster can exist really, really quickly. It can happen really quick. Tennessee has been bad for 20 years. People are already forgetting that. Yeah. And they're 10-2, and now they've absolutely ascended in his second season. So I think that can exist. Michigan gives me a ton of optimism too. The fact that Harbaugh's got them finally up to that point that they can return to glory, if Tennessee can return to glory. But then the other point of you look at our schedule, and this is where again I would love to just be in the room. If you're Matt Rule and you're looking at our schedule and you're looking at the teams we play, and you're like, wow, this team was not very good this year. They almost beat Iowa, or they beat Iowa, almost beat Wisconsin, 14-3 in the fourth quarter against Wisconsin. We're beating Minnesota late in the game, blew that lead too. It's all of these games with a team that isn't that good, without a head coach, without a defensive coordinator, is beating Wisconsin, is beating Minnesota, is beating Iowa, is beating winning almost every game and then effectively losing them in the fourth quarter. I guess you got to feel like he's going to come in and just lick his chops and be like, wait a second. All I got to do is just not screw up the fourth quarter against Minnesota and we're going to win. Sweet. I'm going to get to 8 wins tomorrow. This is going to be so easy. The Big Ten is so bad. It's so bad.
How long ago does it seem we were the only loss ever to Northwestern this season?
Oh,
my goodness, Ireland, it's so easy to forget those things, but it felt like a different team. And, defensively, we were such a mess in the first 3 games. They keep Chenander around. The 4th game was the Oklahoma game that we left there. That's been the problem of this team for the last 2 or 3 seasons. You're so close. You're constantly so close, and you're not getting over the hump. You're not finishing games.
Well, I was going to say, we talk about this all the time when players in the transfer portal. And they're, it might be like Ernest Hausen, for example. I mean, I don't want him to go, but it's at the same time, he's coming off of a team that only won, 4 games, right? So it's what's the loss? What's the big loss if any of these guys go away. But at the same time, if you got a coach in there that can pull out the best of these guys and we play disciplined football, we actually turn out to be kind of a hard out, you know? And so I guess I say that to say this. In my mind, our team is far better positioned now to make a quick turnaround with Matt Rule than it was when Frost took over for Riley. I don't think the talent was at the same level. I don't think we were as equipped personnel wise to be molded into something that could win some games. I feel like this year, though, especially with those last games, if we can keep some of them off of out of the transfer portal, allow Matt Rule to kind of implement his culture, add some transfer portal guys. It's crazy for me when people say that it can't happen, actually, because I feel like it's as likely to happen as not. And as many years of a drought as we've had, we are way due. I'm like,
wow. Well, here's I want to throw a question back on you. Now I get to ask the questions, but here's here, because I think that's a really interesting point. Because I debate this all the time. Is we have top 20 recruiting classes every single year. We have our roster is riddled with 4 stars and 5 stars and 3 stars and high ranking.
Best recruiter in the West. Yep.
Every time. Best recruiter in the West every time. So let me ask you this, because what is your guys' take on the Deion entry press conference, right? I've like found some tweets that have hit pretty well of saying Rule came in and basically said, I chose to come coach here. I'm going to coach you guys. I want to coach here. Deion basically showed up and was like, get out of here. I hate all of you guys. I don't want any of you guys to play for me. Everybody should just leave because you guys suck because you went 1-11.
Right.
What do you think is the right balance? Because you could have come into Nebraska and done that. It could have been hey, you guys are 4-8 this year, 3-9 last year. You guys stink. Everybody leave. I'm just gonna be all my guys. And he didn't, but he could have.
But you said it before. I'm a Prime guy. I love Deion. Yeah. As a player, he was one of my favorite guys to watch of all time. I've watched his coaching journey. I liked what he was doing down at Jackson State. I'm really curious about this hire to Colorado because there's a lot of things that are far, far different from the place he's coming from. And his message coming into the program, okay, yes, I get it. They didn't win a lot of games, and you're coming in, you're kicking the door down, telling them to get in the transfer portal and this and that. Like his line about I'm bringing my own luggage and it's Louis. I'm like, okay, Deion to me is really starting to feel himself quite a lot as a coach.
Loves himself.
Yeah, he really does. And you just got to the Power 5 level, buddy. And you went to Colorado, which I don't think is as easy a place to recruit to as maybe some people do. I could see it going very, very, very poorly there. But as far as I think he would have, with that attitude coming to Nebraska, I think he would have rubbed people far too the wrong way. He even said in the opening press conference that they've been putting up with this nonsense for the last 20 some years. In Colorado. That's a long time. We talk about Frost throwing Riley under the bus. Deion just threw the last 20 years of staffs under the bus and all the players along with it into some kind of stuff.
Culture, look, fit's important and culture changes are important. You want to change culture, but how quickly you do it, how well you adapt. I'll give, maybe a relevant local example to this. Tommy Frazier coached at Doane for 2 years. Came in there and said, we brought in a bunch of Florida guys here. Yeah. We're switching everything over. We're going to, basically there was, I don't know exactly how the conversations went, if it went the same way that Deion did there, but in 2 seasons, they won 2 or 3 games. They were down to half their roster. They quit going after the recruiting base that they were going after. They alienated a bunch of fans in the process and it didn't work. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen.
Never been the same.
Doane's never been the same. I'm not saying that exact same thing is going to happen here with Deion, but the thing, look, when you come into a place on day one, you make big statements it's easy to make big statements on signing day or on hiring day, right? I thought there was a moment with Rule where he caught himself, and I liked what he said. There wasn't any big gotcha moment thing like, hey, the Big Ten's going to have to adjust to us. At one point he said, we're going to work harder than, and he stopped. And he goes, we're going to work as hard as we can work. There's no point in comparing it to anything else. There's no point in saying we're going to work harder than Iowa. Yeah, we don't know that. There's no point in saying we're going to lift more than Wisconsin. Have no idea. We might not. They're going to put in the time too. I like to crap on our opponents to the east, but you know what? Iowa's done a great job over the years of developing players and working hard. So why would I sit here?
Didn't help them this year.
So why would I sit here on hiring day and sit there and say that, we're going to work harder than them? We don't know that, but we're going to work as hard as we can work. And if the guys in this locker room want to be a part of it, then there can be a place for them. And that's essentially what he said on day one. That's not what Dion said. Right. Dion walked into there and basically said, leave. And I've got a bunch of Division II or FCS guys that I'm going to bring up with me, and they're going to take your place.
I know.
And these guys are and one of them, my son, is going to be the quarterback. And these are the guys that are going to fix our issue, and we're going to play in the Pac-12 next year, and we're going to win with these guys. It might work. Heaven forbid, it might work for him, and it might completely flame out. But nobody I've talked to thinks this is going to work more than 2 or 3 years, because if he is successful in it, he's going to be gone.
Right.
Yeah, it's gone.
Well, my other part of the problem is you seem to be blaming the players for the coaches that they had. And Mel Tucker just jumped ship a year ago. So you're talking about a group of guys here that haven't had a lot of continuity at the head coaching staff. So it just seemed like to me a kind of a harsh, and I could see him pulling back and go, well, listen, the reason I said that is because I'm challenging those boys and the ones that'll stay here. I know they're the right type of guy for prime. That's how they say. Like, okay, prime. And I get that. There's an argument to be made for that. But just off the cuff, the first time I saw it, it rubbed me a little wrong. If I was younger, maybe it wouldn't rub me wrong at all. That's if you have kids and that about that age, you're like, well, shit. The last coach promised my son that we'd be a lot better, and he developed and everything like that. You're telling my son to jump in the porthole and get porthole.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you were one of the players in the room, or if you're one of the parents of one of the players in the room, how would you feel watching that? And I guess I would compare that to Rule right now at Nebraska. I think any one of the players. Look, we're going to lose kids to the portal. We lost an in-state kid, Bramer, the first recruit of the 2023 class. It's been with us for a year and a half. We lost him today from Pierce to go to Iowa State. You're going to lose some guys no matter what. And I've heard that there was positive things that Rule did with their recruitment, and they still left. It doesn't, there's going to be collateral damage in any kind of change. When Frost got here on day one, the second he got done with his press conference, he went right over to Bryson Williams' house to go and try to recruit him. We didn't get him. He still went to Wisconsin, where he'd been committed for months. As we learned later, it's not like he had a great career there, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It was more that you're setting the precedent that this is what we want to do. Mickey, when he had his opportunity there, he went to Gretna, and I believe Rule has gone to Gretna too and tried to get Zane Flores here. I wouldn't expect Flores to want to come because he's been committed for months and months to Oklahoma State. I don't expect anything to change there with the recruitment, but you still throw that offer out. You still set the precedent that it's important for us to go after you, because you know what? In the transfer portal world anymore, this is like a marriage. I hate to say it, but like marriages are like 50-50. They're going to work. It's 50-50.
It's not even a marriage anymore. It's more like a networking thing.
Yeah,
it's more like I got to get to know you because later on.
I'm just saying the success.
Well, that to me is the biggest point of this whole thing. That's like the best coaches out there, because that's where I truly think we're going to see like a full generational shift in coaching of the guys who are phenomenal coaches the last 20 years are not going to be the best coaches the next 10, because the best guys are going to be those guys that are doing exactly what you're saying, Mac, where they're recruiting guys now to get them in the portal 4 years from now, or 3 years from now. That's, hey, you go ahead, man. Hey, go to Tennessee, go to Wisconsin. That's totally cool. I'm going to keep texting you.
Well, but that's
I'm going to text you every day for the next 3 years. And when you hit the portal again, hey, hit me up.
Yep. But as the NIL differentiates between the lower programs and the bigger programs, these lower programs are going to become farm systems for the Alabamas and everything like that. They will not be able to keep them.
Yeah, and we saw that with Vanderbilt's left tackle went to Alabama last year, and one of the hardest positions to get in the transfer portal is offensive line,
because those guys are legit gold.
That they are legit gold. And guess what? I'm going to go back to.
But if you have the right jerky, ladies and gentlemen,
I'm going to go.
You can get more linemen than anyone.
I'm going to go back to go to Alumni Hall on December 10th from 12 to 2 p.m. and talk to the pipeline there. Get some pipeline jerky here. Let's see what the there we go. Get the pipeline jerky, because
nobody loves fat guys more than we do.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
If this is a space that we have an advantage in, look, Nebraska football, in the history of college athletics, college football, it doesn't make sense that Nebraska is one of the top winningest programs and all those things. I mean, you wouldn't pinpoint and put a pin right here and say that Lincoln, Nebraska is a blue blood of football, but it is. And it is because the fan base cares as deep as they do.
We demand it,
right? And this is the thing. This is one of the things that we can have some control over. And I love again, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning, Dave. I love what you've done. You're just an average fan like anybody else. I mean, 10 years ago, you started
an average fan, to be clear.
Yeah. 10 years ago, you and your brother, just your average fans, and you just say, you know what, let's just start up this little Husk Guy thing. Let's see what happens. And 40,000, there's Vegas Jer, 40,000 followers later, and that's just with Husk Guys. That's not all the different accounts that you have. I mean, you're the biggest fan following of any social media account out there.
That's awesome. Really? Is that really right?
If you add up everything, how many followers do you have right now?
So Husk Guys has 40, but then all of the different accounts, like the Husk Guys Media Network, as we call it, is over 70,000 followers across all the different accounts. Is that really
the most?
Yeah, so it's the most.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yeah, within the fan.
When you think about it, this is a rabid fan base. For anyone to be the most of anything in this, that's props on you. That's amazing.
And what I love about it too, what I love about it is that, again, you could have used your energy, and your brother could have used your guys' energy 10 years ago to be negative. You could have. I mean, you could do whatever you want with it, right? I mean, spend your time how you want to spend your time. This is where I'll insert us back into the conversation. The Redcast. We could have given up at any time because, oh gosh, we're losing a bunch of games. The love of this program that we have as fans, it transcends wins and losses. The wins hurt to me as much as they ever have before, but I always, and I can be a realist. I can be a realist and look at all the challenges that we have ahead of us. At the end of the day, I always have the optimism that we can get back to where we were. And I think to say that we're going to get back to where we were, it has to be, you have to define it. Because
where's work?
When people say, "Oh, do you think we're going to go 60-3 again?" Well, no, you dipshit. Yeah. Nobody goes 60-3.
Say the words.
Nobody goes 60-3 over 5 years. It's a stupid number that nobody should have to be put to, or that should not be an expectation on any coach, any program, anywhere. But the bar is that you are a nationally relevant program year in and year out. 9 wins. I'll start with that is a good standard kind of bearer thing. And that's something that we had a lot of success with for 40 plus years. That's where I want to see the program at. And when you're winning 9 games a season, then the good years are the ones where you're winning 11, 12 and up. And the bad years are the ones when you're going 9-3 or gas, maybe a really bad 8-4, right? That to me is where Nebraska is back. And that's what, and you asked me with a straight face, I absolutely 100%, no hesitation, believe we can get back to that.
I totally agree. Obviously, that's my entire being agrees with that. But I do think I guess I really think if you just look at the division, you look at the Big Ten West, and I know the divisions are going away in a couple of years, but
that's going to change.
That'll change a lot. But it's like you kind of break it down. You're like, wait, we just have to beat Purdue and Illinois and Northwestern, and we're not only in a bowl, we're 8-4. It's like to flip our schedule. It's truly just beating teams that we used to murder. I think that to me is even like you go back to 2011, 2012. It was like we showed up to this conference. I was like, this conference stinks.
So Dave, Big Ten loyalist is going to beat you up and say we've lost a bunch of games. And you know what? That Big Ten loyalist is right. Problem is you haven't seen real Nebraska.
Well, I guess I just like that. I keep going back to like we didn't know what we had when we had Pelini, that we were just like walking in and like he beat everybody he should have, and he was beating Illinois every year. It wasn't even a problem. He was beating Indiana. Like these teams like weren't even like a thought. And now the fact we go into the year is like, are we going to beat Northwestern? It's like what? Are we going to beat Purdue? Like, what is happening Purdue?
I remember when we played Northwestern in the Alamo Bowl in 2000, and they were a co-Big Ten champ, and we beat them 60-something to 20-something, and Dan Alexander ran for 200-some yards by himself. The problem isn't the Big Ten. I got to be so clear with that. Our issues the last couple of years have not been the Big Ten, because if they were, then we wouldn't have been swept by a really crappy Colorado team. We wouldn't have lost to Troy.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have lost to Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have lost to Northern Illinois, for Christ's sakes. Our problem is not the Big Ten. The problem the last God knows how many years has been Nebraska.
Yeah.
And what I like about Trev is Trev came in here, and I think he took his time. He was thorough with what we needed, but it was identifying that we have to fix us.
Yeah.
And that's a harder, to be quite honest, that's harder than anything else to do, is to really truly look at yourself. We've tried everything. We've hired, hey, go out. What we need is a longtime college football coach that has a lot of P5 experience. Cool, we did that. We got Riley. No, we need a Husker guy. That's what we need. Oh, great. We hired Frost.
Right.
No, we need a defensive guru. Well, you got Pelini. He just won the national championship at LSU.
Yeah.
We need a pro guy. Well, we got this guy, Callahan. He came in here. He was just in the Super Bowl a year ago.
It's like, you need better coordinators. Well, we got the Broyles Award winner as the defensive coordinator, and
we were 3 shows into doing a Redcast back in 2017.
Top tight end recruit. Has he even been on the field?
I
mean, stuff like that happens to us continuously.
Well, I made the statement, or probably our 3rd show back in 2017. I made the statement about the defensive coaching staff at that time, and that was the spring of oh God, what
18?
I can't. Who's the defensive coordinator that we brought in? That was
Diaco.
God, I was
The Scorpion on the Toad.
So I made the statement at that time that I go, this could be the best defense. I said it could be the best defensive staff that we've had since the McBride years.
Yeah.
And I will stand by the individually, those guys. Look, Trent Bray was our linebackers coach.
He's doing great.
And Bob Elliott, who passed away a couple months after I said that. Bob Elliott, I love the guy.
Trent's legit.
I had a pork chop dinner with him at the coaches clinic and talked with him for 30 minutes.
That's not innuendo.
And he was pork chop dinner. And he was an Iowa guy. And I'll tell you what, I absolutely love Bob Elliott. Great guy. Yeah. But when I said that, I was talking about him. I was talking about John Perella on the defensive line. The defensive backs coach that went on to be at USC. I can't even think of his name now. Williams. Dante. We're talking, and Diaco was a Broyles winner. And my point is, individually, there were a lot of great parts, great coaches, but between the fit and between it just not being the right, we were switching from the 4-3 to the 3-4 and all that, it didn't work. So they're good parts. Those parts have gone on to do great things at other places.
But it was so weird on top of it.
Stunningly how bad it is.
Do you remember that spring game that we didn't actually play the 3-4 defense that we were going to play all season long because Diaco was afraid that film was going to get out and the mystery that was his defense that year would have been cracked before the first game.
Feel the strain, boys. Feel that strain.
So
oh my God.
And my point,
what would have happened if we would have done that?
And this ties it all back into what we talked about at the beginning here. When you're trying to build this staff, yes, it makes sense. Go hire Orgeron to be your O-line coach. Go hire this guy. Go hire this guy. You write it on paper and it looks great on paper. How's it going to fit? How's it going to work together? I will stand by the fact that defensive staff in 2017 is a bunch of really good coaches. I don't have any issue individually with any one of those guys. Maybe Diaco.
Well, Diaco for sure.
Maybe Diaco. But they're really good coaches. It didn't work together. It didn't fit.
You look at Whipple this year is like a perfect example of that too. It's like, oh, now we're just going to go hire like the one sort of hot coach who coached an NFL first rounder and let's bring that offense here. It just didn't work. It did.
I think Applewhite's I like Applewhite as a running back coach. I think he's a good running back coach. And Raiola as an offensive line coach gets crapped on because our O-line had struggles this year. But that boy, as we just found out that he's going to be the offensive line coach, it sounds like
that's kind of crazy. Well, that sort of shocks me. If all the position coaches going into this coaching hire,
sure,
who would you have picked to be retained? We'll take Mickey Joseph out of the equation.
Yeah,
but out of all the other assistants, would you have said Raiola would have been the coach that's retained? Because he's probably going to be it.
He is definitely going to be it.
That's it.
He was the only one considered.
Is he the one you guys would have picked? To me, that was a long shot. To
me,
I
don't know. I guess the only defense of him has he been given like a proper shot?
Well, I know, but I would have said
he showed up to campus in July, and then it was.
But I would have said Bush improved special teams and defense.
Yeah.
Still got let go.
And
was a hell of a recruiter. Like to me, I thought Bush was there seemed to be no effort, no upswell of let's keep Bush. But Bush was gone. Becton was a guy that had kind of produced at his position, I would say. Even Applewhite to some degree with the running back, but the line was the most maligned and criticized position
But you know what?
of the offense.
But you know what?
And for that coach to be retained,
but
kind of blows my mind.
But for me, I didn't malign him. I maligned the offensive coordinator. I maligned what we did, because when you think about what is an offensive line coach tasked with doing, getting your players to perform at a higher level. How many offsides and the amount of mental errors that we used to have, like when we went and played Oklahoma in Norman, and before we even snapped the first time, we already had 2 pre-snap penalties before, and it was 1st and 20 for more teams. A lot of that stuff got better. Now,
But that to me is
but the X
discipline versus talent.
But an assistant coach is about discipline. He's not calling the X's and O's. And every time that I yelled at, why are you in the pocket again and again and again, I'm not yelling at Raiola, I'm yelling at Whipple. So those are the things there where I think Raiola was hired to do something by Frost that was very different than what his job ended up being once Frost was no longer here. And so that doesn't defend it or whatever, but look.
Well,
this is what I'll say about coaches. Good coaches make good decisions. I think that Rule's a good coach. Rule had an opportunity to hire a lot of different offensive line coaches. I have no doubt. If he chose Raiola,
and that's fine if he chose him.
I think that makes
just between the 3 of us, though. Just between the 3 of us and whoever's listening, though. Who here, raise your hand, thought that Raiola was going to be the coach that was retained?
Oh, if you're saying
all of them,
if you're saying there was only one,
which is
one
what's going
guy.
to be, there's
it would have been
one
Mickey.
guy retained. Who's picking Raiola?
It would have been Mickey.
It would have been Mickey. And if it wouldn't have been Mickey, it would have been, for me, it would have been Bush. And if it wouldn't have been Bush, it would have been Becton. And if it wouldn't have been Becton, it would have been Applewhite, because of running back, maybe like keeping AJ Allen or something like that. I would have gone like 4 or 5 coaches before I would have got to Raiola. I'm not saying it right. I constantly tell everybody who ever would listen to me, I don't know shit about football, and I've been wrong. Mostly, I'm wrong.
I mean, that's
but
the hard thing about this entire fan base. We've all been wrong for like 20
Well,
years. Every idea every single one of us has been
the
wrong.
Greatest
for the last 20
defensive
years.
coach, the greatest defensive coaching staff at Nebraska since McBride is 2017. I'm telling you right now, and I think I know my stuff. Right? No, I get it. You're 100% right. And here's the reality: that we're going to find out if these are successful moves or not. There's no reason getting too worked up today. If you really wanted,
well, there really isn't.
If you
that's 100%.
if you really wanted
no
this,
reason to get worried about.
You really wanted this guy to be the O-line coach. You really wanted that guy to be the defensive coordinator. You really wanted this guy to be the head coach. Whoever it is, I don't care. There's no reason getting too worked up today, because the success or not success is wasn't made now. It's going to be made 2 and 3 years down the road. That's when we're going to find out if it's right or not. Yeah. We kind of crapped on the Deion thing. Deion can prove all of us wrong, man. He can go out there and win a whole bunch of games the next 2 years. He could. And that's what's going to determine it.
You know what might be more important than who the offensive line coach is? The fact that people buy pipeline jerky. No shit though, but no shit. Like, maybe the fact that we can offer these young men more money to come here and play matters a little bit more than the offensive line coach that runs them through drills, throughout the week.
Yeah.
I mean, we need the talent for. I understand.
It's all of it together, which is why.
But it is all of it together,
because that's where, like, I mean, look at Texas A&M. I mean, that to me is forever going to be held up as like they spent $10-15 million on all their players. They have the best recruiting class. They called it the best recruiting class ever. Like, that's the best team that has ever been compiled, and they didn't make a bowl game. So, that's the flip side of everything else of, like, you can get good players, you can get phenomenal players, but if you have Jimbo Fisher as your coach, like, it's not going to do anything. But
that's a national championship coach there.
But
and they can sit there, and I'm sure there's somebody down there. I kind of crapped on the Big Ten a little bit there. Hey, Big Ten's so great. I'm sure somebody down there is like, well, look at A&M. I mean, that's what happens when you're in the SEC. Well, they lost to Appalachian State. Yeah. And so you're going to lose if you play bad football. If you play bad football, you're going to lose football games. And I don't care who you're playing. And what I want to see, and this is where I'm fine with the Raiola. I didn't see the O-line missing assignments necessarily as much as I saw. I had
some get overpowered, or some's
overpowered. Some of it's really.
Some just go like this.
Yeah, I had X's and O's. I had X's and O's issues with what we were doing. I was very outspoken with that with Whipple, all season.
For sure, let me say this: I don't know what Donovan Raiola was asked to do. I don't know what he was asked to coach. It's the same thing. You can make the argument with, like, not Zach Darlington. Who's a strength coach?
Duvall.
Zach Duvall. You can make the same argument with
Zach Darlington is a quarterback.
I know.
Like 9 years ago.
Yeah, he wasn't that long ago. but like you can make the same argument with the strength coach getting canned. It was like, well, what was he being asked to create? The same thing with the offensive line coach.
Sure.
What's he being asked to do with these guys? Is he coming through with what the head coach asked him to do? Now, if that's kind of, he must have interviewed crazy well. I mean, let's be honest.
Anthony Hayek, I feel like Rule is trying to play some 4D chess, trying to get Dylan here.
Hey, Tony, you're not even wrong.
Yeah,
because it's a really good question. Because how do you even, as a
get
resume,
to get Dylan
to get Dylan to be one of the guys who goes, hey, I should be considered. My position group did really well last year. No, it didn't. Not at all. It didn't do very well at all. There was other groups that did a lot better. The quarterback position did better. The wide receiver position did way better. The defensive back position did way better. The linebackers probably did way better. The line certainly was not one of the best groups to do.
I'll just say,
and for him to get the job, come on. Am I alone here? Is it weird that he got the job?
I'll just say you and I will look at this differently.
I
will.
Frame it for me.
I've been framing it all year on the Redcast. Is that, and I've been a bit of an O-line apologist.
This is Matt's rule.
Well, it's Matt's rule. And my thing is, from an X's and O's standpoint, set your guys up for success. When we line up under center on the first play against Minnesota and we get in an A set and we run for 20 yards, when we're pulling guys and you see what the offensive line does well, I mean, my goodness, heaven forbid, Zach Weger just got inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. And I'd like to see what that offense would have done in 1994 if we'd have done 40 drop back passes a game.
I want to be
so it's always about putting your guys in the right fit. No. I've always said with a quarterback is the same thing too. If you go and you draft Peyton Manning and then you run 30 options in a game with Peyton Manning and you lose, nobody should, and it looks like garbage. Nobody after the game should go, we need to fire Peyton Manning. We need to bench him. He's not a good quarterback. You would fire the offensive coordinator and go, why are you running 30 options with Peyton Manning? And so find out what you guys do well and run to your strengths. I didn't think, you know what? We were not a great pocket passing team. There, I said it. It's an amazing statement. We were not a great pocket passing O-line, and yet that's what we seemed to. I could tell you when we were going to get
100%.
When we were running into issues, but there were times that they looked good doing other things. We pulled and we did some things there too. So, that's the challenge there. But this is what I love about Matt's rule. I mean, it is December 6th. We're gone for 100. For an hour 20 here. We've had people. Throwing in questions and all that.
At the beginning, I don't remember how to answer any questions.
I know I answered much, but what I love about this is that the Redcast, everyone that's watching here, watch the Go Big Redcast, what we do on a weekly basis. I mean, I think it's a premier show. We put together, quite a show, a lot of research, Dave, Boomer, Redcast, Rob, what we throw together
analytics.
We get, guests on. I'm proud of the product, just like Dave, what you've done with Husk Guys, you're proud of the product. I'm proud of the product that we put out there. Matt's Rule is a different show because we literally have no agenda. There's nothing.
It's fresh. This is produce, right?
There's no graphics that we threw up other than
we don't know what's going to happen.
And Dave, it's exactly what I expected to happen too, which is go for an hour and 20, and we could go another hour and 20.
I'm not even ruling out going longer. I'm out of ice. Well,
it is. I mean, it is pretty cool for you guys. I mean, it's like, I think I probably was on your show probably 5 years ago. And it was like, how far do you guys have progressed to the fact that you've got a pretty established audience that's dialing in and listening to a live show from where it was when, I mean, you used to edit your videos for like 16 hours. You're like, when's it going live? When's it going live? When's it going live? And you're like,
perfect. Shut up.
It'll be live. It'll be live on Thursday. And then like by Thursday, like half the stuff I'd said was already like completely outdated. I was like, this guy's an idiot. But look, I mean, the fact that you've even figured out the technology and you've got like a pretty established audience and you've got a great following. I mean, it's cool. I mean, I'm glad I was made friends with you guys when I did, because I feel like if I came on now, you'd be like, what's this guy? It's like, what's going on?
Have you ever thought, Dave, about what it's going to be like when we do start winning games?
Oof.
I mean,
oh my God. I mean, the amount of fun I'm having right now at IO's expense is, I mean, it's 7 years worth of it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm responding to every comment. I've had to unmute and unblock like 600 people because I keep getting like, I keep getting like attacked. People are like tagging me into things and be like, oh shoot, I blocked that guy. I can't even see what it is. So I'm like unblocking it. I'm like, oh yes, yes, here I come. Here I come. Here I come.
Dave. But Black Friday was weeks ago. When's it going to be over? I mean, come on.
No, never.
The win happened weeks ago. When's it over, Dave?
Dude, I 360 more days, man. I mean, whatever the next game is, like, I'm right. I mean, I'm gonna ride. Iowa jokes are my number one best hit on every single one I pump out is like a number one bestseller. It's like it's just a fastball the rest of the offseason. It hits every time.
I love it. I love it so much. Plus, you're cheeky funny. You're so good about like not saying a lot, but saying just enough to just like, oh, screws were turned on that one. I could feel it for him. That one hurt.
This is what I'm terrible.
And I relish it. Now, Matthew, my friend,
I'm terrible at social media.
This man on the right here, he is a sensitive soul. He doesn't want to hurt fans,
love it.
And like he wants.
It takes me 12 hours to send a tweet because I have to rewrite it.
I like the fire. I like when you guys.
Oh, it hits every time, and it's like what sells on social media is controversy and drama and like a little edge, and so like I mean we get tens of thousands of replies every day, I scroll through all of them, and it's chaos. But I pick out the like I thrive on like the one or two Iowa fans, and there's such a minority. Yeah. Like the bad fans on both fan bases are such a minority, but I dig them out. I like search and scroll, and I find him, and I'm like, here he is. This is
make
the guy.
Him defend him. Yeah,
this is the guy. I found him. Like this is so like you got to pull him out of his cellar. You got to tease him out a little bit. You tease him out, and then you just like as soon as I like quote tweet one, it's like it's like the hounds like descend on this poor guy, and he just gets like eviscerated. And then I just sit there and I like eat my popcorn and I like read all the replies as this poor guy like just gets like abused by Husker fans. But that like what's crazy about that, we haven't been able to do that in a decade.
Forever.
A decade.
Because wins matter.
Forever.
Wins matter.
I can't say I hate PJ Fleck. I can't say anything about the guy. He owns us. Like I have had 700 PJ Fleck jokes teed up in the chamber in my drafts for years. I can't say anything. But it's like you finally get a win. It's like, okay, I haven't said anything about Wisconsin since 2012. Like, that's crazy. It's like, so they're just like that's not even a fan base I engage with. But like, Iowa's like, here we go. Like,
that was the thing. All the Iowa fans would say, hey, we beat you 7 straight times. I'm like, cool. So is Wisconsin. So is Ohio State. So is Texas. I mean, but now Minnesota's beat us 4 straight times. I mean, the problem is
we're 1-0 against Iowa, right?
Yeah,
hey, look,
robbed a banner from them. That's the best part.
If they want to live in the past, they can live in the past. But I'm focusing on the present. We just beat them this year. Right. So,
living in the past, Hawkeye fans.
Stop living in the past, guys.
In all honesty, Iowa fans, I had to talk myself into getting excited about that victory. Now, because I was so disappointed with how the season went, but I thought about it, I'm like, well, it's
Can we talk about the game itself?
Oh,
sure.
Hey, dude, love to.
We have
did you not want to like stab yourself in the fourth quarter as we were winning 24-0? And it was just like coming back, and I was like, I couldn't breathe. Like I was hyperventilating, just like I can't make another offseason if we lose this game.
We are a 3-8 team going into that game. I'm at my sister's house in Columbus, Black Friday, obviously, and I am not going to get excited. I'm going to just watch it.
I'm going to listen to you guys.
Yeah, go for it. I'm not going to get excited, and I told myself this. And the first half, I mean, we're up 17-0, and I'm still like, nope, they're going to come back. We're going to blow it. We're going to figure out some way. Don't get excited. And my mom's sitting next to me, and she's just going crazy the way that Marty goes crazy. And it was the third quarter. It's when he dropped that punt, and they made that mistake, and that's when I got totally invested. I was like, oh my God, they made the mistake. They fumbled it. I mean, we had 3 straight years of terrible special teams gaffes against them. They finally did it. This is the year we're going to get them. And I got into it at 24-0. And then the bottom collapsed and everything starts falling out. And it's like, oh my God, they're going to come back and have the biggest comeback in Iowa football history is going to be on our expense. Mm-hmm. And when it got to that point, I got in the car.
Sorry.
It's okay. That's just Mac. That's Mac giving himself a pour there. And I just got in a car and I drove to Columbus's Walmart and I just sat in the parking lot and listened to it on the radio. It was old school Husker stuff. I had to get away from people. I didn't want to see it. I wanted to just listen to Damon Benning and Greg Sharp. Tell me what's going on.
This is a great question. So okay, we beat Iowa. That was of utmost importance. We were gone into the season saying between Iowa and Wisconsin, we got to win one of those games. Probably Minnesota. We were putting up this too, but of those three, like we want to win one.
Oh,
of those
you got
games.
to win Iowa.
We actually beat Iowa. We beat Iowa and we cost them
because
it wasn't like Iowa was 6-5 and maybe they're going to go to a bowl game, but maybe a shittier bowl game or whatever. They had a chance at the West.
I was rooting,
and we robbed them.
I was
with a turd team and an interim coach in a terrible, tumultuous time. We stole that from him, and for me,
so delicious.
Like, the more I think about that, the more I form that into this little thought bubble. It's so savory. I can only imagine that if anybody from like an Iowa fan base was listening right now, the pit in your stomach right now has got to be god awful.
Well,
you're going to a meaningless bowl right now. Like, well, we're going to a bowl game, but you're not. I'm like, don't care. You're not going to play for anything. You'll probably hang a banner for it, but it's not desirable.
It's delicious. It's the best. It's incredible. And the fact that you can finish your season, like, I mean, think about it, we haven't finished our season on a high note in 7 years. It's
forever.
7 years. And so now you get to do it. And you finally get to have that 1-0. Like it's very similar almost to like, they're not quite on the same level of like the Pelini winning that Arizona bowl game of like that momentum like builds.
Johnny GBR there, man.
Johnny's on that house. Johnny's up late.
He's been extra funny on Twitter.
Listen, and you're right. I tend to be the friendlier of the type. I'm gonna give
appreciate your friendliness.
I'm gonna give an olive branch to the Iowa fans here. I will. I this is what I do. Hey, I'm part of the show too. Look, it's
all right.
Look,
all
this. Right. I'm going to say something that I didn't want to admit 10 years ago. It's a rivalry. It's a rivalry. I'm giving you that. If there was one game that I would have told you at the beginning of the season I wanted to win more than anything else, it was Iowa. And Boomers
for sure. That's
Stein there, yeah. But it's absolutely Iowa. And we couldn't afford to lose to them again. We need to win that game. And that's exactly what we did. And it was an unbelievable finish to the season. And so now, through scheduling, the way that scheduling is weird with the Big Ten right now, next season we play Wisconsin again at home. So we get them 2 years in a row in Lincoln, and we get Iowa back in Lincoln.
Nice.
So basically to end next season. This gets back to let's finish the talk. Or let's get towards finishing the talk. Let's talk about next season.
I have a question just so I'm
go for it. Go for it.
In my head. In the 7 straight times that Iowa beat us, of those times, how many times did they win the West?
Well, they would have won the West in 2015 when they went 12-0, playing nobody from the East and nobody in non-conference because that happens every year for them. And then last year when they went and lost 42-3 to Michigan in the conference championship. Okay. My biggest thing with Iowa is have
they won the conference title?
Hell no!
So I was the entire time that they beat us in the seven. They've never won really.
They've never. Title well, the West hasn't won a conference championship. But my thing with I mean, look, I was rooting bigger in life for Iowa to still make it to the championship game. I wanted them desperately to get the opportunity to play Michigan once again, because what we've learned, this has turned into an Iowa bashing thing, which again, it's a rivalry. We're gonna bash them.
Don't lose the game if you don't want to get bashed.
Well, if I was watching an Iowa, I would never watch an Iowa, podcast. But if I was, I would expect them to be bashing Nebraska. I would.
I mean, of course they would. That's how they gain relevance. Well, up until they lost to us. And now you've got nothing.
Don't go to a bowl game. But let's look at next season. Like I said, my expectation for next season is to make a bowl game. So again, I'm an olive branch guy. I'm looking at this and I still am envious of what Iowa's done. They get to play in a bowl game. We don't.
So your first year expectation for a brand new coach is to get to what Iowa did with their coach that they've had for years, just this last year.
Well, you said that I didn't.
No, I'm just asking, just so I can frame it properly.
I mean, if we went 7-5, which is what Iowa did. I would accept a 7-5 season
for a first-year coach. Cool.
For a first-year coach.
I call that somewhat successful.
All right, Dave. I'll hand that over to you. What do you want? What is an expectation for next season for you? Obviously, Kool-Aid and offseason. We're gonna have a great offseason. But I mean, what do you really want to see year one of Rule?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the schedule. I'm just adding up the wins. I'm at.
It comes out to 13 for some reason.
I don't know. I'm realist. I'm at 10. I think that's realist.
The comment there at the bottom. It's damn it, Rob.
Jeffrey.
Remember, Rob is the one running the back end here. So
Rob's always the one running the back end.
No, I mean, I think like, you're obviously like looking for improvements. You're looking for, I think you're spot on. If he pulls like a 1-11 or 2-10, it's going to be like, you're going to have some big problems. Especially if you look at this, like that means you've lost to Deion at Colorado. That means you've lost to Northern Illinois. You've lost to Louisiana Tech. You've lost to Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State. We play those 4 in a row. So I think there's like an element there where the bar is so low. It's so low, right? It is. It to me, it's like, you see the feel of joy of us. We're celebrating a 4-8 season because we just beat Iowa, right? Like you don't have to win that many games to truly get this fan base going, right? You beat Colorado, you beat Northern Illinois, you beat Louisiana Tech, probably lose to Michigan. But then it's like, if you could beat Illinois, which shouldn't be that hard, right? And then you beat Northwestern and then Purdue, like Michigan State, Maryland, it's just these games. And like even Wisconsin, who's going to be with a new coach and without their defensive coordinator, because he's going to be our defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. I guess that to me is where I always struggle with these games. Is it's like when you come into the season, they're like, well, Illinois got beat, and it's like Illinois stinks. They lost. They beat us, and then they lost like the next 3 games. Like all of these teams stink. Michigan State stinks. Maryland stinks. Purdue is not good. Northwestern is 1-11. Like all of these teams stink. I refuse to believe that like we can't go into these games. It's like, oh, watch out for Illinois. Like I'm not going to watch out for Illinois. Like it's what are we doing?
But Dave, we've lost to them. So did we stink?
Yes. We stink very much. We stink a lot.
There you go.
But that's just it, though, right? That's the thing. If we can just unstink, you win 8 games. Period. Like just unstink.
But Dave, that's not even wrong because we clearly have stunk. We've stunk. Yeah. We've done things that are stupid football plays. We have lost games. Despite our talent, despite the level of coach, and we've lost games. It's in the most bizarre and weird way. For us to make a turnaround, we're talking like this much.
That's the thing. It's like this is the worst season we've ever had, the worst team we've ever had, and we were up 14-3 in Wisconsin in the 4th quarter.
Right.
We shut out Minnesota in the first half. We shut out Iowa in the first half. And this is the worst team we've ever had.
11 points on Northwestern when we kicked the stupid onside.
11 points against Northwestern when you kick the onside. Like we're not getting obliterated the way that like some of those Riley teams like got obliterated, or even the Callahan years when we were losing by 70 points. This is like you're up 14-3. If you just punt or kneel the rest of the game, you win the game. And like, and you almost give away the Iowa game. It's so crazy. It's just like, it just seems like we're not that far. Right, I think we're very far from Ohio State. Very far. We're very far from Michigan. But we're not far from beating Northwestern and Georgia Southern and Purdue and Michigan State and Maryland. And it's like this conference is not good.
But yes, we're very far from Michigan, maybe Ohio State for sure. Very far. But we're not very far from a substantially better record overall. You know what I mean? Like we could get to 8, 9, possibly 10. That doesn't mean we're Michigan. That doesn't mean we're Ohio State. But if we got to 10 wins, then we're on the precipice of changing.
This year's a joke. Like when you look back at this, it's like Georgia Southern ended up stinking, and I thought that was like the greatest Georgia Southern team in the history of football. Oklahoma finished terrible. Northwestern didn't win another game. Like all of these teams, like we talked about the Nebraska curse, which was certainly like a funny joke but it was more like, no, we just lost to horrible teams.
And what I would say, the same thing is like, I think the Big Ten's as a whole, I think is good, but I think it's very lopsided it's top heavy. I mean, those top 2 teams aren't getting challenged, or the top 2 or 3 teams aren't getting challenged by all the other 8 or 9. They're really not. They're winning all those games, which is so similar to the SEC. The SEC is the same thing. Oh my gosh, Alabama wins all these championships. The SEC is great. No, the SEC, look at the SEC championships of the last 10, 12 years. They're completely lopsided. The whoever the dominant team of that time is, which is usually Alabama, is destroying the other team. Well, what happened last week? Georgia destroys LSU. They're for being this deep, great conference, they aren't very good. Here's A&M beating the West champion LSU, and A&M loses earlier that year to Appalachian State. So the point is that I'm not a Big Ten history guy. That's not my thing. We should be beating the teams that we're losing to more times than not. No Nebraska fan thought that we'd come into the Big Ten, and the record that we've had against Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue is abysmal.
So bad. It's so bad.
So bad. That's different from the Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. I'm talking like there are teams that we should be beating every single time, 90% of the time, and we are 90% of the time losing right now to them. That's got to end, and that's got to be able to end
next year.
Recruiting wise, we beat them. So, anyways,
it's even
next year.
Like, I mean, you look at like how cursed we've been as a program the last 5-6 years. It's like, I mean, the fact that Nebraska is the only team that, or was it like one of the only Power 5 teams that hasn't made a bowl game in the last 5 years? It's
the only. We're the only. Once Kansas got there,
now can't. Like that. That's so insane to me that like the fact that we haven't just accidentally. I mean, we haven't just accidentally beat somebody. It's like Northwestern has beat Ohio State multiple times. Purdue always comes out.
Kansas State does every.
What Kansas State does. What Kansas just did this year. It's like the fact that we couldn't just accidentally stumble into like a couple big wins and caught Wisconsin on a bad week. The fact that we haven't done that in 7 years it's so beyond cursed that it's like you don't even know how to put words to it. How do we not stumble into any of these wins the way that any of these, Michigan State stumbles into an 11-win or 10-win season last year. It's like, but we can't even stumble into like one win. Now I'm not even talking about stumbling into a 10-win season. It's like just catch Wisconsin on a bad week, catch Iowa on a bad week, catch like Minnesota on a bad week, and like we sort of just get. Like,
you would almost have to say the game against Iowa this Black Friday was the closest we've ever come to that.
Yeah, really. That's it.
Like, where we beat a team like nobody expected us to beat, really, and that team had something on the line. That team had there was something of consequence to play for, and we beat them. That is like in the Frost era. That's it. I mean, that really is it. I know we beat Michigan State one time when they were ranked, but that was at home, and really nothing was on the line yet. Iowa had something to play for, and they lost. And they lost in their home in the turf, and that was
their senior day.
And they lost to a team that was not only in transition but had an interim coach. That it's kind of crazy to me that I haven't felt more emotional about the game. But to me, again, that speaks to the fact that I'm a Nebraska fan and not an Iowa fan. The fact is, I don't want to get that excited about an Iowa victory beyond the fact that they should never beat us. And it irritates me that we're having a conversation about them beating us. And I know Iowa fans out there, you're going to throw the record in my face for the last 7 years. But what I'm telling you is this. If we would have maintained the level that Iowa had maintained for the last X amount of years, that Nebraska has also sucked. As Nebraska fans, we would have been disappointed with the fact that we hadn't won any conference titles during that same time. You guys have won enough games to win a conference title, and yet you haven't.
That's the Bo Pelini thing. I mean, for 7 years, we went 9-4, 10-4. We played in 3 conference championships in 7 seasons in 2 different conferences, and he still got fired for a number of reasons. But the point is, I mean, Iowa's done no better than what Bo Pelini did for 7 years. I mean, 9-4 and 10-4 is basically what Iowa football is, and that. We aspire to something better, and look, it's bit us in the butt at times too. We've made some fires that we would look back and say we probably shouldn't have done, but at the end of the day, look, what I love about Husker football is that we can find so many guys that want to talk football with us, and maybe that's something that we'll do with Matt's rules. Is that over time we'll find guys that if there's other people that want to join us, sometimes it's going to be just you and I. Dave, I'd love to have you back on a routine basis.
We'll definitely have Dave back because everything's ascending right now.
Everything is.
Dude, it's the best time of year.
We are 100 minutes into this. I love it. This is what Matt's rule.
This is what Matt's rule do.
Matt's rule started with you and I going to the bar down in Hickman, and we'd sit down at a bar and we'd just start talking football. And by the time we got done, about 100 minutes in, 1-2 hours in, we'd have 10, 12 guys sitting at the table with us. We don't know who half of them are, and they just want to talk football with us. And so I thank all the Redcasters, Matt Rulers, I don't know, Husk Guy followers, whatever we want to call them.
Rulers or followers?
Rulers? Whoever's following, following along right now. Thank you for following along with us. This has been a blast. This is exactly what I hope it is. And these are going to be some random shows. This one we planned because it was show number 1. I swear to God, there's going to be times where you might get 5 minutes notice. Mac's going to come down. We're going to have a drink, and we're going to be like, let's just go live.
In the comment section below, leave links, and we can hit you guys up before we go live. So we make sure if you guys want to see it, just to make sure. But just in the comments below, leave some links so we can hit you before we do it. But he's right. We're a spontaneous group of guys.
Next week, Matt's Rule will be live from Honky's Hot Tub. It could be.
We don't even know. In fact,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Matt's Rule in 10 minutes from now could be in the Honky's Hot Tub. We don't care.
It could be in the hot tub.
There'll be no shame in our game.
Dave, I don't know how to end this. It's our first show, but what I'm going to do the same thing. You know what? This is where the Redcast kind of crosses over here. I'm going to do the same thing with a parting shot. I don't know how else to end this. So I'll start with you, Mac.
Oh, God. You're going to do the same thing with a parting shot, but start with me.
Well, because I want our guest to be the final say. So I'm going to end a parting shot with you and then with Dave. And there's no pressure.
Okay,
Mac.
all right. I know.
We're just all looking at you.
I don't feel any pressure. I have 100% faith in Husker Nation and Husker fan base, despite what others may tell you. I understand that we're going to go out there when we see the head coach and we see the assistant coaches, we're going to welcome them to Lincoln, welcome them to Nebraska, and tell them to do the best they can. All I'm going to say is just continue to do that. Continue to be the best fan base in college football. And that's really all we can do. When we talk to our man Dave here, that's what he's doing. He's putting out his positive energy, and it's all for the program. It's all for the betterment of Nebraska football. And there's just that's so fun to me. That's so enjoyable to me that you can meet a guy that you never knew, and we're connecting on this one basis. Like, let's get better at football.
Matthew.
Oh, hey, Tony. I love you, brother. But anyway, that's all I want to say. Don't get hung up on the assistant coach hires and whatever. Like, no one's going to be able to tell you anything. We're going to have to see it on the field. So let's just wait till we see it on the field before we make any real strong comments about who got hired, when they got hired, what kind of recruiter they are, blah blah blah.
Yeah. See, Rayola, I agree with you. Rayola's a good hire.
I didn't say that. I said, wow. I hope he is, though. Perfectly to my point, though. I'm not rooting against Raiola. Sure. I'm excited. I'm just surprised. I'm like, wow, you would. That tells me actually that Rule is giving a fair interview to guys and letting them lay out their vision and say, oh, you match my vision. Come on board. That's great. I love it.
I love it. I hear some rapper. I think that's somebody kind of going through his beef jerky here.
Look at that protein. How much protein have you just ingested, bro?
Dude, I'm like starving. I didn't know.
Didn't know it was going to be an hour, like 2 hours.
It actually is legit delicious. So
cultivating mass as we speak.
Dave,
he probably put in like 28 grams of protein just right now.
Let me say this before I hand it over to you, Dave. You sent us a whole bunch of the packages that we threw out at the Varsity Club when we did the show a couple weeks ago, and we ate a couple of them for you.
There you
go. The honey barbecue one is just amazing. That's
very
amazing.
good.
But the other one's the peppercorn. Peppercorn. Is it just peppercorn or what do you call it?
Peppercorn.
Beef jerky, peppercorn. So this one's pork. There's pork, honey barbecue, and then there's a beef jerky peppercorn. Both are very good.
We're talking two different varieties.
We ate. So
That's
you
awesome.
sent us I think 10 or 12 bags. We ate 3 of them on the way to Omaha when we went to Hill Varsity Club and threw out the other 9. But they're awesome. They're great beef jerky. Again,
so, people who like beef jerky, I'm sure you're familiar with like Trader Joe's or who's the big bag one? You know what I'm talking about. But it doesn't really matter. The tenderness of this beef jerky is on par with that. This isn't like a Jack Link where you're going to get a piece of leather boot. It's all like that. They're similar. It's very consistent throughout the whole badge, the back and the sizes and the squares. It's all very, very good. So if you're going road tripping, if you're recruiting down, West Nebraska, go ahead. And again, one more time, December 10th,
come out Saturday.
1120 P Street from 12 to 2 p.m. 25% off store-wide, all the gear at Alumni Hall, but also you'll get a chance to meet some members of the pipeline and get some product. Dave, take us out of here.
Yeah, look, boys, I appreciate all the press. I think I'm having the time of my life. I think it's awesome that, a lot of Husk Guys has led this to something like this and being able to be a part of, doing it not just the positive energy to actually try to be a part of changing the entire culture of the program. I think for the sake of taking us out, the mission is clear. It's like, you got to win that offseason national championship. And what does that mean? We're finishing 4-8 today. So today is December 6th.
Okay. Done.
Last or second to last in the Big Ten. My promise, my guarantee, my mission.
Here we go.
In August, we'll be preseason favorites to win the West. It's guaranteed. That is the guarantee. Is the hype train will be rolling so fast. We'll have Jim Leonard will be the defensive coordinator, whoever it's going to be. The recruits are going to be coming in. No matter who the recruits are, they're going to be the best recruits we've ever had. It's the best quarterback we've ever had, best wide receivers we've ever had. All of our problems will be behind us.
Okay.
August is going to come around. I guarantee you. Big Ten, we will be preseason Big Ten favorites. Someone will have us as the Big Ten West favorites because Wisconsin will be a mess. It'll be there, but that'll be earned. That's going to be earned over the next 9 months. And at some point, somebody in August will be like, "Wait, didn't you guys finish 4-8?" And you'll be like, "Shh."
Yeah, you just put that right over their mouth.
No.
Ain't your concern, baby.
Yeah, not your concern. And then we play Minnesota in that first game. And right as you hit Minnesota in that first game, I'm sure reality kicks in, then Colorado and everything else. But that blissful moment of that first week where you're like, maybe we've turned the corner.
Yeah.
Maybe we've turned the corner. But that's, I truly think, I've said this before, I think on your show and many times on tweets, I love my off-season self more than my in-season self. I just struggle. Getting punched in the face every Saturday. Now I don't have that. It's just I just get to live my life and I just get to sell some jerky and be optimistic, and nobody gets to keep me in check. So optimism is the name of the game. We're going to the off season. It's the best time of year. Cannot wait.
Yeah.
We're doing it, boys.
Hey, we're right where we need to be. We got a brand new strength and conditioning coach, which always provides for the best off-season videos.
The weight
ever.
He's a monster.
For some 40-year-olds to get ripped. Hey,
he's a monster.
Okay. I don't know what we're doing yet, but I imagine it's going to be some explosive lifts and some whatever. I'm piggybacking on what you said. Right now, it's all roses. We got the coach that looks like he understands what it takes to make Nebraska relevant again. I don't think there's anybody that we've talked to tonight, all three of us, that would say that we're that far away from making a difference in this conference. The Big Ten is a very good conference. It's not beyond us, fellas.
No.
There's no question. It's not beyond us. I mean, Penn State is probably our comp for the other side, and as long as those other sides exist, and they challenge for it. So, listen, we got the right. Let's go under the assumption that we got the right guy at the helm. And we're moving forward with the proper plan. And my goodness, Dave, I can't imagine your world, say 8 months from now when everything is.
We're 4-0,
5-0. Oh God,
I haven't lived through it yet, so I don't know.
Likewise. I have, but not in this.
The only thing that came close to is Riley's 7-0 start. And that was
the Redcast wasn't around.
Yeah, you weren't around. I was dancing on graves that entire time, and everyone was like, "This is fake. This is fake." And I was like, "I know it's fake, guys, and very well aware. I watched the games. I watched the games. Yeah, I got it."
Well, what isn't fake is I think we've created something here, Matt, that we're gonna have some fun here over the course of the offseason.
Good time.
It's gonna be fun. We have all these notes and everything, and this is the traditional Redcast thing. Used none of them.
No,
I used almost nothing. This was totally off the cuff, and we only went for 2 hours. So,
guys, I'm honored you had me on. Thank you. I appreciate.
Well, we'll have you back on
Absolutely,
again.
We'll have you back on frequently.
And next time we have you on, we want to hear how everything went this weekend at Alumni Hall.
Yeah, of course.
On Saturday here, I'm going to put it one more time up there. Alumni Hall, December 10th, 12 to 2 p.m. 25% off store wide. Go there, get yourself some pipeline jerky, NIL.
Be part of the solution, folks. Be part of the solution.
That's what it is. And it's what we talked about Trev earlier. He's a problem solver. Be part of the solution, not the problem.
You can buy your gear anywhere and not promote the program, or you could go where we're telling you and actually get this thing moving.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Yeah. Get to Alumni Hall. Great place.
Let's direct our dollars, ladies and gentlemen. We all want the program to do better. We've suffered long enough.
Love everything about it. Well, I don't know how else to end it, but
I mean, just keep it sexy out there, Husker Nation, and we're gonna be here to keep pumping that positivity out there.
yeah, keep it sexy and remember that Matt's rule.
Matt's rule.
That's rule.